The Legend of Korra. Okay, can I be real here? I actually love The Legend of Korra. No joke, I know it's pretty divisive amongst fans of the world of Avatar, but honestly, I've always enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, it definitely has its flaws, but I always found it to be greatly enjoyable. Now, if that opinion didn't scare off some of the real Korra haters out there, this one definitely will. I actually find Korra to be better than Last Airbender, at least at certain times. That's something everyone always talks about whenever Korra gets brought up, isn't it? Avatar: The Last Airbender. Considered by most people to be the pinnacle of American distributed animation, and really just animation in general, it was groundbreaking and truly carved the path for children's entertainment to start being taken more seriously. It's a huge inspiration for countless people and still holds up today. And every time Korra gets talked about, it seems like Last Airbender always ends up overshadowing it. I've seen a lot of people give a little warning for others who want to watch The Legend of Korra. If you're going to watch it, don't compare it too much to Last Airbender. And honestly, I think that's terrible advice. Korra is the direct sequel to Last Airbender. We can't ignore that, and we can't deny it. Yes, it does things differently and goes in new directions for the characters and story, but to act as if it's not directly tied to its predecessor does the show a disservice. The Legend of Korra clearly expects the viewer to already know about this world. It only very briefly covers important world-building topics that The Last Airbender already established. Korra is meant to be viewed as a continuation of the story, and I think people's insistence on trying to keep them separate is wrong. Korra had a lot to do in order to live up to the standards Last Airbender set. Korra had to pick up where we left off, deliver interesting new characters, interesting new conflicts, and still retain the important aspects of the different cultures we see from the original. That's no easy task, and not enough people give Korra credit for doing a really excellent job at this. But perhaps more importantly, Korra needed to do one thing every sequel needs to do: be familiar, but also unique. Let's use The Legend of Zelda to help explain what I mean by this. When I play a Zelda game, I expect to see a forest area, a water area, and a fire area. Those are the core staples to these games, essentially being a part of what makes Zelda, Zelda. However, I don't want to see the same old ideas churned around over and over and over again. I've already seen a Goron mine inside of a volcano. If I see it again, it just feels boring. Good sequels need to keep those familiar aspects of the world, story, or characters, yet also need to do something new and interesting. Otherwise, the story might feel too alien or too boring. So, what does all this have to do with Korra? Well, a lot. Korra had to do a lot of things similar, yet different, in order to make a new and interesting story. I didn't come to the show just wanting to see Aang's story again. I want to see what's next. Something to break the mold, and Korra delivers. So, I want to go through The Legend of Korra, and help explain everything I loved about it. Give every episode the attention I think it deserves. Because there honestly is so much to unpack in each episode, and I never see people taking the time to slow down and really give it the attention it needs. Yeah, people talk about The Last Airbender a lot, but Korra always seems to get shafted. Well, no more. It's time someone took the reins and really dove into everything about The Legend of Korra. What all does it do the same as Last Airbender? What does it do differently? And most importantly, why do I like it? How could I sit here and so boldly claim Korra can be better than Last Airbender at times? Well, there's only one way to find out. Enough with this lofty opening, let's dive into reviewing the first episode of The Legend of Korra. Welcome to Republic City. Okay, so here we go. You ready for this? It's gonna be a whole lot, right from the word go.
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
Yeah, here we go! So obviously, right off the bat, it's apparent that Korra is the exact opposite of Aang, and I love it. Korra is so gung-ho about being the Avatar. Look at her, she's living for this. Aang really didn't. He had the story arc of, I wish I wasn't the Avatar. My life is a lot harder than what I wanted it to be. That's all fine and dandy for Aang and his story, but seeing our main character being portrayed as something completely different just instantly hooked me. This type A personality of Korra can lend to such different concepts and conflicts. Next, Korra is already bending the different elements. I don't think it's because she's a prodigy or anything, more like once she realized she could bend anything, she definitely seems like the type of little girl who would keep trying out stuff and trying to do different things. More importantly though, it tells us flat out that this story is going to be something totally different. See, Last Airbender's main story was the plot of the Fire Nation, a great big war that's rocking the world. Aang's role in that war is to scramble to master the 4 elements. That was his main personal conflict, learning how to bend the elements. Korra has already done that. Korra's story would be boring if it was just treading the same old ground of, oh, you gotta learn how to move a rock, yawn, we've done that already with Aang. The fact Korra already knows the elements we watched Aang learn helps keeps things fresh for a storytelling perspective. But it also ties into Korra's overarching plot, or the fact that she doesn't really get one. Like I said, Aang's role was to fight the Fire Nation. Saving the world is the constant burden on his shoulders. But Korra is living in the aftermath of that war. People aren't jumping at the chance to dive into another earth-shattering war, and this plays into both their overarching stories through their seasons. Aang's story is presented as something that will affect the whole world, but as we go further and further in, it becomes much more personal. His own personal struggles play major roles in the finalizing of his development. Meanwhile, Korra is the opposite. Her story is presented to us as a personal conflict only for her, but as time goes on, her story grows into one that affects the whole world around her. It's incredible. Now, I'm sure seeing so much of the show being presented as so much of an opposite compared to Last Airbender must have put some viewers on edge. We have seemingly abandoned a lot of that familiar comfort I talked about before. However, I think it was majorly important to start off by presenting everything to us that was going to be different from beforehand. They didn't try to tease Korra as being exactly like Last Airbender, because it's not. She's not just repeating Aang's story, she's embarking on her own. Anyways, back to cute fat baby Korra.
We have investigated many claims, both here and in the Northern Tribe.
This brings up an interesting point. How exactly can you tell if your baby is the Avatar? I know it was pretty easy to tell for Korra when she started bending everything at such a young age, but what is the normal way? In Last Airbender, the monks said Aang picked these specific toys out of thousands of other toys, and that's how they knew. Do the water tribes do the same sort of thing? Also, this guy's line is pretty assuming. What if the Avatar was born in the swamps? Pretty uppity of you to assume they have to be born in one of the poles. But I'm willing to bet this line is also here in order to give some quick world building / reminding for the audience, establishing the fact that the water tribes are generally situated at the polar caps. This whole opening scene with Korra finishing her firebending training also does an 11 out of 10 job establishing her character and personality. She's hot-headed, energetic, driven, and a little bit overconfident in herself.
She's strong.
It's so crazy with Korra, seeing the people we watched as kids for all of Last Airbender coming back as much older people. Something we never really got to consider during Aang's journey is the idea that when the Avatar dies, there will probably be lots of people who knew them in their previous life. Since Aang was frozen away for so long, he never really got to meet anybody who knew Avatar Roku. I really like how much of Korra's story hinges on her meeting the people who knew Aang before. That is where we get our familiar sensation for the series. As another little thing, I love how Korra generally uses firebending a lot throughout the whole show. Aang never used it all that much, both because it was the last element he learned, and also because he was always hesitant of it after burning Katara. It's fun getting to see our hero playing with fire a lot more this time around. Okay, I know it can't just be me gushing about everything I love. It's only fair if I critique the show on both its good and its bad. And honestly, this dude's line here always felt so heavy-handed and clunky.
Ever since you were a little girl, you've excelled at the physical side of bending, but completely ignored the spiritual side.
I definitely think we could have established this element for Korra's character a lot more naturally in the dialogue, especially since the line right before he says this is her firebending instructor telling her they haven't decided if she's mastered firebending yet. So this White Lotus dude just drops this exposition dump unprompted, really. But God, can I just say, I love Korra's facial expressions. Like, both Avatar shows had very fantastic facial animations, but Korra just really brings a smile to my face.
Naga, you should have seen it.
Sniff. Bark, bork.
I'll be honest, I like Naga more than Appa. I know, I'm just full of bad takes, aren't I? I'm sorry, Naga is just infinitely cuter by being half dog. Appa can't help it. The odds were stacked against him. Like, yeah, I love him, but doggo.
Just taking Naga out for a stroll. Don't worry, we're not going far.
This actually does a really good job at establishing how Korra has been essentially locked up in her training area for her whole life. The guy didn't even have to say anything, and Korra already knew that's what he was thinking. Also, the fact she sounds so exhausted over having to clarify this shows us this is something she A, deals with a lot, and B, isn't very thrilled about. It's a bit like Sokka's dismissive comment about explaining bending from Last Airbender.
And it's
Yeah, an ancient art unique to our culture, blah, blah, blah.
How someone reacts to something tells us a lot about both that character and whatever it is they're reacting to. On a more negative note, however, I really don't get why the White Lotus got turned into a bunch of control freaks. Like, yeah, later they try to bullshit an explanation by saying it was because Zahir was threatening Korra's life or whatever, but in this first season, it never gets explained. It always just sort of felt like a random excuse to keep Korra caged up in order to lead into her naivete about the world outside. I guess I'll take this time to talk about Korra's music as well. I love how it has similar themes as Last Airbender, yet is also very distinctly its own thing, both by utilizing a different genre, as we'll see with its more jazz-like tones while in Republic City, but with the instrumental moments like this part here. It's just utilizing a different instrument than Last Airbender did. It makes it feel like it's still a part of this established world we know, but also its own unique thing. I get the feeling I'll end up repeating that a lot over these reviews.
We are finally here.
Let us all now bask in the glory that is J.K. Simmons. Seriously, I fucking love J.K. Simmons' performance for Korra. He's already an absolutely fantastic actor, but his voice performance here is just amazing. I think he has the best vocal performance for the whole show. I love how different Tenzin looks from Aang too. Aang, even into his adulthood, had very round, soft features. Tenzin's face is very sharp and angular. It's an easy way to distinguish him from his father.
unhand me, strange woman!
Introducing the #1 worst character in the show.
Gran, I've been reading all about your old adventures.
Introducing the 3rd worst character in the show. Yeah, that's right, you heard me. Okay, honestly, in this first season, the airbending kids aren't that bad. I get that Iki and Milo are supposed to seem annoying on purpose, but they're still charming in their own ways here and there. And I know what you're thinking. Does that make Iki the 2nd worst character? No, Iki is one of the best characters. Fuck you, fight me, she's great. And now I bet you're wondering who the real 2nd worst character is, huh? Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. Underrated character Pema. Yeah, go Pema! Woo, #1 Pema fan! It's actually always been so crazy to me how much characterization she gets in this initial scene. Katara says she thinks the baby is going to be another airbender, and the fact Pema looks so blatantly disappointed by that just tells us so much. And it ultimately ties into the conflicts of this season.
A nice non-bender who doesn't blast wind in my face every 5 seconds.
This is a really simple way to quickly establish the conflict non-benders have living alongside the benders. This moment is played up for a joke, almost as if Korra, and in turn the audience, is meant to not give what Pema says any extra thought. Silly Pema, ha 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 ha, bending's great. But the more we go into the season's conflict, the more we might look back at this moment with Pema and realize just how difficult her life has been living without bending, and how frustrating it can be when everyone around you seemingly dismisses your issues. Okay, another thing I have a problem with in this first episode, similar to that White Lotus dude from before, this episode has just the bad habit of telling us character traits rather than just showing them.
She's strong,
She lacks restraint.
but Tenzin has always been rather serious.
What is with these lines? We really don't need them. You could already see clear as day that Korra is strong and that she's reckless. In that same scene you said that she was already demonstrating that to us. And it's the same here. By Tenzin's lines, his line delivery, his general demeanor, we can already tell that he's a rather serious dude. We don't need Katara to hold our hands and tell us the things we can already see.
I'm sorry, Korra. Your airbending training is going to have to wait.
Boom. Conflict established. 7 minutes in, and we already have a strong indication about how this story and the character development will play out. Yes. Last Airbender did not establish any of that until, like, the end of the first episode, beginning of the second.
I don't understand. Why are you making me wait?
I don't know why, but Korra's hand movements here always catch my eye. Like, I never look at anything else. There's actually a lot of good little movements that the characters have in Korra like this that help humanize them in the middle of the talking scenes.
Believe me, I'd be happy to find another airbending master, but you're the only one.
See, this is the kind of line that makes exposition work. Katara, take notes. Cause yeah, once you think about it, obviously Tenzin is going to be the only airbender, but like, it never really crossed my mind until Korra actually said it. Especially since in the prior scene they established that he has 2 siblings, so I guess you could have assumed either of them were also airbenders. I also just really love the relationship between Tenzin and Korra for this whole show. They're usually at odds with each other, just based on their general personalities, but their development together is fantastic. It's an odd relationship that they have because they technically already know each other. Well, by the way Tenzin talks, it's implied he had already met Korra long ago, but, like, they know each other on another level. In her previous life, Korra was Tenzin's father, and now he's becoming a father figure to her in turn. I'll go into it more later when it becomes a bit more important, but I love the fact that they also share a personal character arc with each other. Not just teaching Korra airbending, but the fact that they both have to live up to Aang's greatness. Both Tenzin and Korra have big shoes to fill, and the whole world is looking at them, expecting them to reach certain heights due to Aang being their predecessor. It's really smart how the core of Korra's story is tied to the Airbender family. This is exactly the kind of story I wanted to see from the next generation of Avatar.
If you can't stay here, then I'll go back to Republic City with you.
Yeah, that's some Avatar determination right there, let's go! I really love how it's Katara who encourages Korra to commit to her escaping plan. Not only is it just a nice way to portray how Katara has developed into her old age, but it's nice that she seems to be the only one who truly understands what Korra is going through as the Avatar. Also, it's just hyper adorable how Katara letting Korra leaves feels very reminiscent of how Gran let her and Sokka leave to help Aang way back when they started their journey. Also, nice touch, seeing Korra say goodbye to her parents too. It would have been so easy to forget about them entirely, but it's cool that they are shown here, and it's cool that they don't try to stop her or anything. Our introduction and exposition is over. It's time to start the real adventure for Korra. This simple little smile Korra has as she's embarking on her ship perfectly sets the mood going forward. She's eager and excited, and so I feel the same. Our first look at Republic City! I love it here! One of the things people always talk about with Korra is how for this first season we only stay in this one location, and honestly, I really enjoy it. Aang's story was all about flying all over the world. The only place they stuck around for an elongated period of time was Ba Sing Se, and they very quickly made it apparent that they hated it there. For Korra's story, it's a fun, different direction to stay in one location for a lot longer, and have that be a location our character actually enjoys being in. Not only is it different, but it offers a lot of different types of conflicts and story beats than what Aang's crew went through. The other thing is the new rise in technology. Again, I fucking fucking love it. It makes so much sense, too. Technology always advances at such a high rate. Like, Korra takes place 70 years after the events of Last Airbender. 70 years ago for us, at least at the time this video is being uploaded, is the 50s. Just think about all the technological advancements our world made in that short span of time. Also, the technology plays interesting new roles in how the characters handle new conflicts for them, and also gives the feeling of Republic City a new vibe compared to the rest of The Last Airbender. So, the giant Aang statue is 3D, and I'll be honest, it never looks quite right. Like, I get why they went with it, but meh. 3D mixed with 2D never really works for me. Small thing, I fucking love this song. They play this track several times, and I love it. It's great. I'm glad they didn't linger too long on the idea that Korra doesn't know how the real world works. It's fun here, highlighting how much of a fish out of water she is, but I could see it getting really old really quickly. I think what we got here is a perfectly fine amount for this gag. Look at Korra, eating fish like a hobo. Like, I'm pretty sure the airbenders would have made you food, why not just go there first? But for real, this is also just some real fun character establishment for Korra. She's handling being on her own pretty poorly so far. She's obviously inexperienced in how the big city works, but she's also not letting it get in her way. Naga's running through traffic? Just make sure you apologize to the people you might be bothering. Can't get food because you have no money? Just go fishing. She's got a really fun go-getter attitude, and I love it. Good girl, caught her own fish, aww.
Are you tired of living under the tyranny of benders? Then join the Equalists!
This is probably the best scene for this first episode. It was definitely the one that got me wholly sold on the show. The concept of the non-benders being treated like second-class citizens by the benders is such a unique concept. It also makes a lot of sense that this would end up happening in this world. Sokka sort of briefly touches on it in Last Airbender, but being a non-bender means you're basically living life at a disadvantage compared to everyone else. Like, just think about how many things non-benders get left out on. They can't play any of the bender-specific sports. There's so many doors or machines that rely on bending just to use properly. I was really intrigued by who the antagonist of the show would end up being, since we can't just have it fall back on the Fire Nation again. Presenting it as the non-benders is not only super interesting, but also a direction I would have never expected. As for this scene in particular, I love seeing how Korra kind of demonstrates exactly what the problem is.
What are you talking about? Bending is the coolest thing in the world.
Korra's mindset is the harmful ideas that are pushing non-benders down, something we as audience members might not have even considered before. I also love how Korra is presented to us as inherently flawed. She's not a perfect saint like Aang was. Aang's struggles were all very internal. He was generally very agreeable with the people around him, even to the Fire Nation. That concept was very pivotal towards him ending the war. The fact that the core concepts of this season is also something Korra herself needs to change about her own outlook is a fantastic way to give her something to strive for, and perfectly ties her development with the story's development. Also, small thing, Amon's mask is super recognizable. When we see him later, this style, color palette, and shape for his mask is so distinct, it's easy to remember he's the one at the center of this conflict.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!
So this is our first real look at Korra's ability with bending, and it's awesome. Yeah, sure, we saw her firebending training in the beginning, but that was just a really small teaser of what she could do. This scene really highlights Korra's skill as an avatar. It's also a lot of fun seeing the bystanders reacting to her different styles of bending.
What just happened? Did she just earthbend?
I will say though, 14 minutes feels a little too long to get this. I know there's been a lot of important world building and character establishment happening, but I would have liked to see a little more bending before this point. Oh, little girl, so cute! This is exactly how I am with my own dog too. Like, everything he does is worthy of me fawning over him. The police are metal benders, and it's amazing! This is such a cool life improvement compared to Last Airbender. The fact that there are types of bending that are now just way more common than they used to be. Yeah, metal bending would be super important to learn as an earthbender. Yeah, it sure would be convenient to bend lightning more often. Also, the way the police use metal wires is just so cool. Toph's metal bending definitely felt very rugged. It was sloppy, kinda clunky. It made sense because it was the first time anybody was ever figuring this out. These shiny curved surfaces of their armor and the thin, slick movements of their wires does a fantastic job establishing how metal bending has been refined over the years. And later, learning that Toph was the one at the helm of establishing the police force this way is a nice touch too.
See, I'm the Avatar.
And your Avatar title might impress some people, but not me.
This is something else I really enjoy about Korra compared to Last Airbender. In The Last Airbender, being the Avatar was such a huge deal. Aang was simultaneously the symbol for hope and a symbol for hatred. Nowadays though, in a world of peace, Korra gets treated no more special than a celebrity. Lynn's a super fun character too. Korra's been faced with a lot of adversity and kind of rude people in Republic City, and honestly from some of the White Lotus as well. But Lynn here definitely feels like she carries the most weight when it comes to being an antagonistic force against Korra. Not only because of her police status, but just the way she so snidely talks down to Korra. It's fun seeing how her character develops beyond this point, but we'll cover that when we get there. Oh, that's cute. Milo rode on Janora's back because he's too young to fly on his own. Cute. I never noticed that before.
I thought I should put off your training in order to uphold his legacy. But you are his legacy.
Ah! My heart! The way they wrap up this episode is so nice. Korra and Tenzin establish their groundwork for their relationship as a mentor and student, and this little heart-to-heart explains it perfectly. Tenzin really doesn't say much here, and that's because he doesn't have to. We can perfectly understand what his line of thinking is, and how he got to this conclusion. Seeing Korra and Aang's statue after listening to her words helped him make up his mind about letting her stay. It's simple, but it's great. Also, this last shot of Korra hugging them kind of perfectly summarizes what their different personalities are going to be like bouncing off of each other. But then ending off on hinting at Amon's forces is just an extra little nugget of intrigue that convinced me to watch the next episode. Honestly, I love this episode. It does a solid job establishing our main conflicts and our main characters. It is a little heavy-handed at times, and it's pretty barren of real action. But overall, it did everything it needed to convince me to watch more of the show. And I know this review really leaned in hard about comparing Korra to Aang, and I promise that won't be the only thing I talk about with these reviews. After all, the majority of the exposition has been handled now. Now we can dive into the real story proper from here on out. I'm super excited to be talking about Korra at such great lengths. I can't wait to get into the show again, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode too.
How does it feel to be the worst cop ever, huh? Shut up, your mother buys you Mega Bloks instead of Legos. You fucking take that back.
Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed that. Shout out to my $10 patrons. You're all amazing. Nako, James Dodds, Cool Duck, Andrew, Ramiel, Valhalla Knight, Chamomile, G Extreme, Classy Critic, Surge, Boulder Off Bros, Noah Perkins, Sunny Shy, Great Bar, Caleb Grimm, Pentamenta, Genital War Thunder, Carmen, Order, Jake, Soren, Storm, Amber, Lolith, Livid Aries, Matt Frost, and Just a Chap in a Top Hat. So yeah, I'm gonna review Korra. All of Korra. I'm so excited. I hope you're excited too. I love Korra, and I wanted to hear people talk about it, but everyone always talks about like it as a whole. They never break down episode by episode. So here I am doing that. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you're gonna enjoy the series. I'm super excited to do this, and I want to see all your thoughts and opinions about Korra in the comments, even if they disagree with me, which I expect most of them to, but that's fine. I just want to see your thoughts and opinions, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.